My name is Krista Hansen, and I am a planner with the Department of Transportation and Mobility. And we are recording the meeting. Just to give you all a heads up, I will be posting that recording on our webpage, which Fernando just shared in the chat. And I will also be sharing on multiple slides on my screen here. So this evening we were talking about shared spaces, parklets and streeteries. And let's see here. So for our goals for this evening, we'll both be sharing information about this program, defining, first of all, what parklets and streeteries are, also providing background information and context to why this project has come about now, and potentially what it could look like for Tucson. We also will have a Q&A at the end, so we can answer any questions you have, listen to any feedback or concerns that you have. The way that we have it set up is if you have questions, if you're able to put it in the meeting chat. And then if you're on the phone, once we start the Q&A, you'll be able to unmute and ask questions if you have questions while you're on the phone. I'll be joined today by two other speakers, so Emily from Living Streets Alliance and Sonia from Fours Architecture. And we're having a slight technical difficulty, so they're actually having to join in by phone, but they'll be able to, you'll be able to hear them. And I have some of their slides on here. So as I said, I think I covered all of this right now, and this is the program website, which I'll also be sharing at the end. So first of all, what are parklets and streeteries? This may be a new term to some of you, or you may have heard of it and not know exactly what it is. So both of these terms or both of these types of projects we're considering under the Shared Spaces program, so sort of this umbrella term. And it's talking about utilizing space in the public right-of-way. And so transforming space that is typically city-owned property, and it can also be done on private property, but in transportation, we're focused on city-owned property, which would include streets, parking spaces, walkways, sidewalks, and allowing businesses and groups to utilize that space and transform it into a public space or even a private space. So first of all, the term parklet, which has been around longer than streetery, but it's repurposing. So a parking space is most common into a mini park that is publicly available and open to anyone. So it's a space for anyone to use, come hang out in. There's often seating, landscaping, bike racks. Sometimes there's interactive activities that are available there. But it's maintained by either typically a business or organization that's near the parklet, but it's open to the parklet or open to the public. And the other type of project we're talking about is a streetery, which the term has come about I think more recently within the context of COVID-19 and the pandemic, which I'll go into more information on, but essentially it's like a parklet, but it's extending the footprint of a business. So either like a restaurant or a bar to allow for additional seating. So it's maintained by that business and it fits still in either the parking space, street, walkway, while allowing still for pedestrian access and safety, but creating additional space so that business can have outdoor space and additional seating. The last kind of project that we are considering under shared spaces is either a pop-up parklet or streetery, and this is basically allowing more flexibility in both the time length that the project is up there, but also, maybe it's for an event or seasonal or a certain specific amount of time, but it could be either a parklet or streetery that is designed using low-cost materials, temporary installation, designed to be put up really quickly and and not intended to be there year after year. And so a little more background. So in May of 2020, our mayor and council approved regulatory zoning relief that allowed for the temporary expansion of restaurant seating. And so in response to COVID-19, in order to support businesses and allow them to both reopen and have a safe space where customers could come and either be outdoors or allow additional space to allow for social distancing requirements. This initiative was approved quickly to allow businesses to quickly transition to this. It temporarily waived any permitting fees, and it also relaxed some of the zoning requirements. So, and essentially it was, with the goal of supporting businesses. Here are two examples from local examples of Panka and Elliott's on Congress. And what we heard, so through this time, overall, we've gotten really extremely positive feedback, both from the Tucson community, from business owners here. Overall, to probably no one's surprise, there's been an increased demand for outdoor seating and outdoor spaces where people can safely gather. And many people said that they only selected places that they could have outdoor seating. And we've heard interest in expanding even beyond just outdoor dining, potentially retail or shared space like Parklets and other community spaces. From business owners, we've heard some people saying that this is truly just the lifeline to their business and allowing them to continue during the pandemic. And it's been the real key to allowing them to reopen, that it's crucial for the success of their business. And that moving forward, they want to keep this option around. So keep outdoor seating, keep a space where their customers want to be. And so in response to that, we are currently exploring transitioning this emergency response into a permanent program. And some real key things that which I may have double slides here, we'll see. So we want to streamline and simplify the process with the goal of making it easier for businesses and groups to apply. That's some of the main feedback we've gotten in terms of not having a really clear laid out process. There's a number of different departments that are involved in the permit process and approving different aspects of it. So our goal is, how could we have sort of a one-stop permitting, and even using, looking at developing a design guide and a clear checklist for businesses or organizations that are applying, and also a pre-approved templates or materials that are pre-approved to allow a fast-track process to get approved and then to be able to install this, rather than going through the current process, which takes more time. Anytime you're adding lighting, a shade structure, different things that trigger different approval processes and can really complicate things. And also trying to support businesses as much as possible. How can we make this affordable and flexible enough that businesses who want to invest different amounts are able to participate, and also allowing room for creativity. I mean, this is seeing a lot of the projects that have gone up across the country. It's pretty amazing how creative and the types of projects that businesses are installing. So that's a piece that we want to, as much as possible, allow for some creativity. Let's see, and I think this is a repetitive slide, my apologies. And so now I'm gonna welcome Emily from Living Streets Alliance, and if you're able to unmute, I'll run through your slides here.
Okay, Krista, can you nod if you can hear me all right?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So thanks for having me today. I'm Emily Yetman. I'm with a nonprofit organization here in Tucson called Living Streets Alliance. And you might be familiar with our organization. We do Ciclovia Tucson, a big biannual open streets event in non-COVID times. But a lot of our work has been around thinking about streets as public space and exploring how we can, do more with them and experiment with them to do things besides just move around. So for a little bit of background context, we many years ago saw things like this image that you're seeing here, parklets popping up in other places in the country. And there was a lot of excitement and enthusiasm around trying to get one started here in Tucson. And so we worked with EXO Roscoe on the corner of 7th Street and 6th Avenue, and Tap and Bottle, who was also there, to try and get the first parklet off the ground. And that was also working with the city of Tucson too to develop a pilot program. And for a couple of reasons, it didn't end up happening. And so what happened next was, maybe next slide, Krista. You'll see remnants of it if you visit that intersection now. We were able to do something called Corbett Porch. So this was knowing that there were going to be changes coming to this intersection because of the Downtown Links project. We were trying to think of something called lighter, quicker, cheaper approach to create a space that people could utilize in the interim. And so using things like paint and planters and flex posts, we were able to work with our partners at the city of Tucson and the businesses there to create essentially a parklet, though you can see it's on the ground, so that's maybe and not elevated, so maybe that's a distinction. So really this was kind of a pop-up approach, if you will, something that created a temporary space that could last as long as it needs to, but would be really easy to eventually remove or make more permanent through different materials. So fast forward, obviously, as Krista just mentioned, I think the pandemic in many ways was exciting because of how much our need for public spaces shifted across the globe, right? And so what we saw was, streeteries and parklets and flex zones and all of these different things popping up across the country. And if you want to go to the next slide. Right, so this is a flex zone up in Denver where they essentially closed down a street to cars and created space for people to safely distance while walking, and also expand all of these businesses out into the street. So it was a way of pooling kind of shared public street space to support business and also make sure that people could visit those businesses safely in a time when, we were all really concerned about public safety. And so that was one thing that we saw. And next one. Sorry for the blurry image, but this is one of the earliest things that we saw. This was down in Florida where, you could see how there were the very polished versions of what we saw in Denver. And then there was stuff like this where people were literally saying, what do I have on hand? What can I use to create an environment that works for folks, and pulling stuff out in the street. So we saw like a huge range of people responding to a need with what they had. And there's something really exciting and valuable to that. So let's see, what was really exciting about, I think, coming out of the pandemic is that this really showed the need and the value of having what we're calling these pop-up approaches. So ways to create spaces and try things out before having to make a major investment in them. So it allows businesses and community groups, right, to see if an idea works, to fine tune it, to try out different things, and respond to seasonality too, because right in the summer here, maybe it's not a great time for sitting outside in the middle of the day, but boy, all winter long, it's beautiful here in Tucson. So want to have more options to be outdoors in public spaces. And from our organization, we heard from a lot of different businesses that they wanted to be able to do this and wanted to be able to take what they had on hand or something that they could find nearby and easily set up an extended area adjacent to their business. And so now if you stop by Exo Roscoe, you'll see what we worked with them to create what I think is one of the first pop-ups in Tucson, which they used stock tanks and planters and some really basic materials that they had on hand to get additional seating outside because they had to entirely close their inside, dining area. So let's go to the next slide here. And this is an extreme case, but I think that what's really exciting about what Krista is talking about today is just the potential for streets to function in different ways depending on our needs. And so this is, another country's response to how do you establish social distancing and allow people to vend and have total flexibility. And we're probably not going to do this in Tucson, but what a great thing that we've got a city that's thinking outside the box about what's possible and how we can create safe guidelines for how to do this and enough parameters for more businesses and community organizations to propose things and try them out. Next one. And so this is kind of where we are today. This is maybe a good example of a COVID pop-up, right? So it's clearly very basic things that people had on hand, where we're kind of, I think, trying to take the program and explore is how can we ensure that safety is part of the process. So kind of streamlining some of the materials, as was mentioned, but again, giving businesses and community groups the space to experiment and try things out, and hopefully eventually make them permanent, invest more. And yeah, I think, Krista, I covered everything there. So yeah, I will pass it back to you, but that's kind of been our role with this work is helping encourage and look at what other cities are doing in the pop-up realm, and we hope to see it evolve and continue.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Appreciate it. And now I'd like to invite Sonia from Forest Architecture to talk about, she has a little different perspective on it and experience with Parklets and Tucson. So welcome, Sonia.
Hello, I'm Sonia Satensky from Forest Architecture, and our experience, we have a vast array of hospitality work. We've done during COVID, we did drawings for about 8 different shared spaces, variety, some in right-of-way, some in on private parking lots. So we're coming at this from twofold, I guess, a standpoint of as a design professional who's gone through this process as it existed under duress during COVID, right? And understanding what the process was from our perspective, applying from it. And as well understanding that a lot of our hospitality clients and people who are not clients are not going to be able to engage or don't want to engage a design professional to do what should be a relatively cost-effective way to expand their area to serve people. Or if it's a nonprofit and they want to create a public space, like a parklet space as well. So our goal is to really, during the course of writing these design guidelines with the team, is to make it very usable, not just for professionals. So I look at it as my standpoint, right, if I'm going to use this guideline, but also for lay people. And so that's why there's been some discussion here already, Emily, and Krista already talked about a kit of parts. And so we're developing with the whole team a kit of parts approach so that it can be a streamlined process for the city to review. but also so that it's an easy to use guideline with almost a cut and paste approach for users, so that they can pick and choose and say, okay, I need this kind of plot. You know, if I want to do a long-term Streatery or Parklet, we can choose from these three kind of deck systems or flooring systems. We can choose from these three kind of railing systems, and know that if I use these railing systems and cut and paste that railing system into my submittal for the city of Tucson, it's going to be approved. So taking a lot of guesswork out of it and the repetitive nature of, you know, submitting something, getting it rejected, submitting, et cetera, out of the equation. At the same time, you know, as an architect and somebody who, you know, works for a lot of hospitality clients, we also understand that we want to see creativity in these, right? And also to have a vibrant urban environment. We don't want every single one to be cookie cutter. So also building in a little bit of flexibility with that, so we can change colors, we can vary the design within a general kit of parts enough so that people can customize it and make it their own. I also want to add that beyond this kit of parts approach for both pop-ups and long-term shared spaces, there will still be an option available that you could do something totally custom. So if you're like, none of these work for me, I want to go crazy and, you know, do something really custom, or like the Hermanus one that was, you know, much more involved build out that we saw on a slide earlier, that you still have that ability. But again, it's not going to be sort of the streamlined cut and paste kit of parts approach. So your review time will be more extended, which may work for a lot of people. And you'll be going through more of the traditional TRE process. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to cover. I think that's about it. And I'm sure as we get into it, questions, you know, we can discuss further. Oh, and also I just want to add one more thing, is just making sure that that kit of parts has affordable components, as affordable as possible, while still being safe for everyone.
Great, thanks, Sonia. Appreciate it.
Yep.
And just have, let's see here. So just want to highlight a couple additional ways that we are both providing information and taking input and feedback from the public. So this Friday and Saturday, we will be installing a pop-up parklet. And so it will be a temporary parklet. It will give you a chance to see what a pop-up could look like. We will be in front of the new Presta Coffee, so 501 East 9th Street. We'll be there Friday and Saturday, 7 a.m. to noon, both those days. And we'll have staff, city staff there, staff with Living Streets Alliance, and informational boards, as well as our survey and some opportunities to provide feedback and input. So it should be a really fun way to show people kind of what's possible with these, you know, low cost temporary materials, just setting it up for 2 days. And we'll have the ability, we're converting 2 parking spaces that are in front of Presta Coffee, and just within that existing space, we'll be having the event that will take place there. And we also have an online survey, which we're collecting input. Fernanda just shared a link to the survey in the chat. And then there's also obviously the link right here. And then our website here, we have that link available, which I think Fernanda's going to share. And that we will continue to update with all this information. There's additional background information on there right now, the survey, more photos, and information there. So at this point, I will open it up to any questions here. So feel free to either type questions in the chat, or if you're on the phone, you can unmute and ask your question that way. And also, Emily and Sonia, please jump in too to answer if we need it. So, Fernanda, I don't think I see any questions right now, but let me know if I've missed any. Let's see.
No, I'm not seeing any questions either.
Okay. Oh, let's see. So I do see someone's raising their hand, Paul and Kendall. If you're able to either unmute or write in the chat. So if you're on the computer,
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have the unmute option until just a second ago. Thank you. Hey, thanks, Krista and Emily, for the presentation. I think this is a great idea, and the more we can do, the better, and the more permanent we can make these things, the better. We were very fortunate to live in Europe for many years, and it's just kind of a way of life over there. I mean, they actually have very large pedestrian zones where there's no vehicle traffic in the core of the city or town in many places across Europe. And I think that's really kind of the vision I think the city needs to have. Clearly, there may not be that kind of demand in the summertime, so we may need a different approach based on our climate. But we should be looking for pedestrian zones and getting to that where all businesses on the pedestrian zone can just put out their tables and chairs, in a pre-approved area and just adopt that way of life, right? I mean, that's what I would love to see, and not a laborious bureaucratic process for businesses to have to do this, but just kind of an area where if you got a business along, let's just say Congress, there's not going to be vehicles there, right? And of course, we need to address the streetcar to keep pedestrians off of the tracks. But that's kind of the vision I hope the city has, is to try to expand this in a big way and have some pedestrian zones in the city. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing, Paul. Appreciate it. And I think we're very much in line with things that you've mentioned, and in part of creating this shared spaces program, it creates this umbrella for flexibility and broader opportunities. We're seeing other cities create open streets, which is, I think, what you're, similar to what you're talking about, where they're closed to cars but open, to people, like Cyclovia, and that city. So yeah, so there's a number of things that I think can fit into this program, and that we're open to try to be creative about and fit into it. But appreciate your comment. And I think an additional thing is, building off of that, is the goal is that this is a citywide program. So while there's a certain context, perhaps when we think of downtown, like you were saying, Congress Street, we want this program to be able to transfer to all parts of Tucson. And so creating flexibility in that, and allowing for people to do sort of creative things with the public space, even if the setting looks differently. So that's kind of the bigger goal with it as well. And I don't see any other questions, but feel free to, I hope people can, yeah.
I was just going to add maybe like one little helpful tidbit of information, which is that, probably most people have seen terms like Parklet and Streatery used in different contexts. And so just wanted to note that you're going to see them used differently in different places. Different cities are going to call these different things. And so just to reflect out that this is the terminology that we kind of agreed upon for Tucson about what we'll call these things and how we'll name them. So I'll just give that example because I know like up in Prescott right now, they're developing a Parklet program, but their Parklets are actually what we would call Streateries. They're extension of premise for businesses to use for outdoor dining and stuff. So just want to share that as a distinction and heads up to folks that you're probably going to see these terms used differently in different places. But for Tucson, we're hoping to use those names in a very specific way for here.
Yeah, I totally agree. Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll just give it a couple more minutes. I don't know if there's any other questions or comments or feedback. We're open to it, and if not, I hope that if you're around this weekend to drop by the Parklet. Should be a fun opportunity, I think, to see it in person and just to show one example of kind of what's possible. So yeah, team, anything else to add, or should we, I don't know, we can wrap up early and that's fine too. Okay, I think that's it. Yeah, thank you all for joining us this evening. And I think I have my email on the next slide here, but feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or comments on this. We're in the beginning stages and we look forward to shaping something that really works for Tucson. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Bye.